Hello and welcome to the Turn 4 podcast. I am your host, Dan Maldonado. This your first time listening? Where the hell you been? If you're a regular listener, welcome back.
Wow.
This podcast comes from two lifelong fans of IndyCar and other forms of motorsports. Got a lot to talk about today. Before we get on with it, I got to introduce you to my co-host, the unshaven Tim Reiner. Hi, Timmy.
Hey, Dan, you noticed I haven't
How are
shaved in a
you?
while. Yeah, I'm
Tim, I
good.
notice
I'm
everything.
doing,
Nothing gets by me. I'm like a ninja.
yeah, you do. Everything else is the same. I just got a little facial hair. That's all. I'm good. All is well. Yourself?
Everything else is the same. The foundation looks a little
Yeah.
better. It's blended a little better this time. So more natural.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, just coming off the 4th of July weekend, which really wasn't a weekend. It was like a weekend and then a day or something. I don't know how that works out.
Felt like a week. I mean, even though I worked on Friday, I was obviously Saturday, Sunday. I was off Monday and then Tuesday. And, today's Wednesday. It's already, the middle of the week. It's only a couple of days left in the in the regular work week. So,
Yeah, I know. It's the weekend again. Jeez.
Yeah. It's been good.
Yeah,
I was out there. I had a good time. I enjoyed myself. I had a great weekend. The weather was kind of crap, but Tuesday rebounded nicely. So,
yeah, Tuesday was nice. But yeah, there's a little bit of rain, but that's okay. Yeah. Everything needs to be green. But no, all is good.
We did not have any rain on Tuesday.
No, none whatsoever.
Yeah.
Monday turned out all right, I think, later in the day. But anyway,
yeah.
Enough about the weather.
I know, because we got a lot of racing to talk about.
I saw there's a lot of racing that happened this weekend.
F1,
this past weekend.
NASCAR. Speaking of rain, IndyCar, no rain. But yeah, a lot of things happening. A lot of things.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you catch any of this?
I caught. I definitely caught IndyCar. That was the main one that I took part in. The rest, maybe not so much, but
right.
Yeah.
So I gotta start with F1. I watched the F1 sprint and the race. Of course, I usually do. The only thing of note in either case to me was that Max dominates again. And what is it with the track limit penalties? I mean, we've seen them. It's not like we haven't seen them before. It's nothing new. But this time I think it made it to the levels of absurdity. There was 1,200 instances of track limits that the stewards were trying to police. And of course, at the end of the race, Aston Martin took it upon themselves to file a protest of the finish of that race. It was upheld, and it had impact on the finishing order. Nothing on the top three, but from there on, which again, that's absurd to me. I think 5 hours after the conclusion of a race, because of a protest for track limits, I think is ridiculous. Here's the thing. If everybody's doing it, what's the advantage?
If the track allows it, what's the problem?
Well, it's not up to the track, right? It's kind of, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not up to that. But I mean, if it happens and everybody is doing it, there's no advantage, right? The advantage is kind of nullified by the fact that everybody's running that same bit of track. There was a couple guys. George Russell apparently did not have anything there. Fernando Alonso, which is probably why Aston Martin did their protest, and Zhou Guan Yu maybe was the other racer that didn't have any penalties because of track limits. 3 out of 20.
Wow.
So I think that's kind of silly. So all in the same turns 9 and 10 for those keeping score at home. But I think it's ridiculous. You didn't see or hear any of that?
Biscuit weigh in on any of that? A lot of that. I missed a lot of that, but I remember track limits coming into play at COTA, and I remember when IndyCar was at COTA and they were going way out in the final 2 turns. I should say the second to last turn, and that was a little ridiculous. I see that you need to sort of have some time of limits when there's that far out, but if it's not if everybody's doing it and you're not cutting corners, if you will, then I don't know why you got the whole situation that's going on there. So
yeah, something has to be done. I think there's right? Track limits. There's policing track limits, making sure that everything is good and safe. But I think there's also a point of, it's just racing.
It's really an F1 thing. It's really not an IndyCar thing.
It really is. Yeah, an F1 thing. So yeah, IndyCar's latest and greatest, of course, is the what is it? The unavoidable contact.
Yeah, that is the new one. That is the one that they've
very subjective to me. So
yes, for sure.
So, I spent quite a bit of time texting with our friend Gacker during the F1 sprint and a little bit on the race as well. A couple of things that came up. Checo Perez, Max's teammate, again fails to make it to Q3, right? By all accounts, he's got a contract for 2024, but as we've seen in just about any form of motorsport, that's kind of sandy at best, right? The team can always liberate themselves from those contracts should they choose to. To you, Tim, this is 4 in a row that he doesn't make it to Q3. 4 in a row in the best car on the grid. Checo safe 2024?
No, not at all. You can't have that type of performance. You can't make it all the way to Q3 when your teammate is totally dominating the series. So,
Timmy, you said no, not at all?
It's not safe. It's not at all safe. That's what I meant.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, I am kind of with you, but it is kind of harsh. My goodness.
Yeah, no, it's not. I don't think it's ever safe. When you're in a top tier racing league, like it's never safe. So you got to perform in and out. And when your teammate is doing as well as he is, and you can't make it to Q3, that's a big problem.
Yeah. I agree with you. I don't think his seat is safe. I don't think his seat was safe, even with a 2-year contract. I don't think his seat was safe even before Daniel Ricciardo comes back. I just think the fact that Daniel Ricciardo is there makes it a little bit more complicated, right? Makes it a little bit more, maybe a little hotter, so to speak.
Yeah. But who's to say he's going to go there, right? You don't know where Daniel's going to go. I think he's going to have
You're right. Oh, here we go. You're taking me to my next subject. Appreciate it. You must have looked at the notes. Nick DeVries, the second guy in the AlphaTauri, who's, of course, the second Red Bull team. Nick DeVries qualifies dead last in the AlphaTauri. He looks to be on the hot seat. Here's the question. Daniel Ricciardo, if you're Red Bull management, if you're AlphaTauri management, those are one and the same. You put Daniel Ricciardo in that AlphaTauri next year or maybe mid-season, like now?
I don't think it can hurt you to put him in there, but I think it'd be better for him to go to Red Bull. I know
totally
it's the same team.
Totally agree. If you're Daniel Ricciardo,
it would be this good send-off for Daniel in his later stages in his career here, as he sort of is winding down, in my opinion. So to go out on a team that I don't know if you came in with them, but obviously you raced with them for several seasons. I think that's more fitting, but I think the junior team should have junior drivers, those that are maybe not as accomplished. So put Daniel next to Max. And I just wonder, with having Checo in there, like there's no pressure to having Checo let Verstappen go, or they're battling on track. Like none of this is happening because Checo just can't perform to the level that Verstappen is. So
I don't know that anybody's looking for him to perform at that level. I think what people are looking for him to perform is a strong number 2. Yeah. I think that's the expectation.
I agree. And it should be. But at times, if you're running 2, you're going to have instances where you're battling your teammate who is, by far dominant, but you're going to have those instances where you're going to have to make some calls. The team's going to have to make some calls. They don't have to make any calls right now.
Yeah.
Just let them go race.
And you're right. And he did. He did push the envelope a little bit during the sprint race, during the first lap of that, the first several corners of that with Max. He raced him pretty strongly. Max, of course, complained. Checo complained, but that was it, though, right? Once Max gets out there, he's done. He's long gone. So it could be anybody out there because he's so far away. But Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Do I think he's safe for next year? I kind of do. Like I'm more on the safe side than not, but I think that's kind of the nature of Formula One. I just think that that's how these things work. I think that's how these teams work, and especially now with the prices or the costs or the value of these teams and the value of this championship, I think that's going to be the case for everybody, right? Max is great
Mm-hmm.
today. Max starts to falter tomorrow. What happens? Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton's still looking for a contract next year at Mercedes, right? What have you done for me lately?
Yeah, I guess. I don't
I know
know.
we got those 7 big trophies. What have you done for me lately?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And that just goes to, you got to perform week in and week out when you're in these top tier teams and you're
Yep.
the number one guy, right? You got to go and do it.
Yeah.
Even if you're the number two guy, you need to perform, and you need to perform to where is comparable to your teammate, because you're always judged against the other car because they have the same
Always.
equipment, the same team, everything goes along with it. So,
Yep. Um, Last thing I'll say about the Austria Grand Prix is that Hamilton not endearing himself to the fandom or those watching the broadcast as he was complaining, I'm being kind, um, lap after lap after lap, pointing out who else was also running afoul of track limits. After, of course, he got his 5-second penalty for track limits. Um, so much so that Toto Wolff had to come on the radio and say, hey, Lewis, we know the car is bad. Can you just drive it? Right? It was a very polite way of saying to your 7-time world champion, shut up and drive, dude. Do you remember that
yeah,
years ago? It had to be like 30 years ago. It had to be 30 years ago. Penske coming on the radio with Paul Tracy saying, if you want to park it, we'll find somebody else to drive it.
I don't remember that. That was the
That was the
message that went
beginning
out
and the
to.
end for Paul Tracy, and that was Roger Penske.
Wow. Was it Cindric? Telling him.
No, it was Roger that
It
got
was
on the.
Roger.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. He
yeah,
used to be up there.
yeah. So it's kind of, it wasn't that harsh, right? But it was kind of like, look, man, we get it, right? You got to
Yeah.
just concentrate on racing, not just calling foul on everybody, right? Can't stand the
Mm-hmm.
whole victimized thing, right? It's like, well, I was victimized, so everybody else should be, everybody else should be brought to the same level. And it's like, well, let people do their job. You do yours, right? And everybody else is
Yep.
going to do theirs. And as it turns out, 1,200 instances of this, everybody was getting called out, except for the 3 that I named earlier. Frankly, I don't
Yep.
know that I can name again. So, got to catch these things as they come out. Otherwise, I don't know that I can repeat myself. Um, NASCAR. Did you watch any NASCAR?
Chicago.
Chicago.
No, I did not see this race.
You see this shirt over my shoulder? It's a shirt, actually. So it's
It's folded very nicely for it
yeah.
being a shirt, I'll tell
Had to
you.
put this up. This is Antoinette's at Road America. Phenomenal breakfast sandwich. They have roasted chicken. Again, it just goes to the elevated food experience at Road America. What does this have to do with Chicago? I'll tell you in a second. But I got to bring it up, right? Because our friend Charlie Mack and Mrs. Mack, this was a gift to,
Nice.
right?
Very
Their
nice.
third or fourth favorite host of their third or fourth favorite podcast.
You got to be the number one. If you're getting gifts, you got to be number one.
You got to think.
I like it. What
You
does it
hope, but
say
I don't want to
underneath
be
that? Can you
pretentious.
tell me what it says underneath? No, I don't think
It
anybody can
says
see
wind
that.
tunnel and turn 3.
Oh,
They have 2 locations. So right at the wind tunnel where you come in and you go onto the track, come out at the paddock. And then they have the
okay.
one at turn 3, which is right in front of the Corvette Corral, which is where the Macs were. So,
Nice. Very
Dan,
good.
what does this have to do with NASCAR? I had zero intention. And when I say zero, I had less than zero intention of watching Chicago, right? Get a text from good old Charlie Mack, right? Got to
Yeah.
flip it on, 6 to go. Compelling. I don't know that I would have sat through that whole race, but it was good, man. It really was.
It really?
Yes.
Nice.
It was really good. I've always said since they changed to this car that the cars are nice looking. I think the cars look really good. They actually looked really good out there on that track. And because I go to Chicago for work so often, and as you know, I walk a lot in the mornings when I travel like that for work because you're going to be sitting in meetings or whatever all day long. I know a lot of those streets that they were on. I mean, I recognize them. I was there and I've been there. So it was pretty cool to see. It was about 6 to go. Road course ringer. I should say that a few times fast. Shane Van Gisbergen, who also everybody stumbled on that name too, who comes from supercars. Not only that, but a pretty handy resume in multiple disciplines, as a matter of fact, if you look him up, including IMSA and Le Mans. He takes the win on a damp track. First time ever in a NASCAR race with Trackhouse, awesome. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And buzzes this thing right through. Amazing. He put on a clinic, Tim. And from some of the comments that I saw from some of the other NASCAR drivers, they were impressed. They all due respect to Shane, for what he did coming over here doing that. And I think he's pals with Scott McLaughlin. I think they come from the same, right? Yeah. So
same discipline. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But you know, I want to say it should be a little embarrassing for NASCAR for doing that, but I mean, frankly, it's not. It actually turned out to be a pretty good thing where they have this, Trackhouse, especially all credit to Trackhouse for having him over and putting him in the car and getting him ready to race. I mean, I don't think anybody would have picked that up. The notion of this road course ringer is different today than it was 20 years ago, right? I think that I'm going to say something nice about NASCAR, Tim. I think that the drivers in NASCAR today are much more suited and much more skillful in all disciplines that they race, because they do race more road today than they ever have. This was, of course, a street course. Of course, NASCAR had it positioned like it was the first ever street course, and what an amazing opportunity this is, right? And it's like IndyCar and F1 been doing it for decades. So, but it looked good. Crowd looked pretty good. The ratings were huge. They almost got 5 million people tuned into that thing, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
5 million.
That's pretty awesome.
I was one of them. Thought it was weird.
Well, good to tune in. I'm glad you watched a little bit of it. It appeared it was, obviously you said it was damp, so it was raining a little bit. I saw pictures of boats, not boats, but coolers that were boats, tires floating around. I think that might have been the day before. I don't really know.
Did you see the tires floating around in pit lane there?
Yes. That's crazy. I saw some of that. But yeah, this is that's good. I think it's great exposure for NASCAR, right? That's what you do when you do these type of events, right? Even when you brought dirt to Bristol, that I know nobody likes, that brought some interest. The Coliseum brings some interest. All that stuff brings interest. It's new and different, right? So why not? Look how much Nashville brought to IndyCar when IndyCar went to Nashville. A bunch of new viewers, people that hadn't tuned in before. So I think you got to do some, if I want to call it gimmicky stuff to get your name back on the front page. I think you have to a little bit.
Yeah. Gimmicky, but not like cheesy gimmicky, right? Like the stage things, the stage wins or whatever, I think is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. And to have him on, they don't have him on the street course, do they?
No, they finally got away with it. They finally got away from it. Yeah. Finally, this year.
That's good.
Yeah. But good for him. He gets to take that trophy home with him. It was really cool to watch. It really was cool to watch. The cars look really good. They had a big wiper on the front in case they, they had more rain or whatever. And it was fun to watch. So appreciate Charlie Mack texting me on that one. Yeah. So I don't know what I was doing otherwise, but it was almost like I was standing on, I'm not watching that. I don't watch NASCAR. I'm not going to watch that race. No interest in it.
Was it like, you got to watch this? This is really good, or basically this is crazy?
Basically, Charlie, I could pull up the text, but I mean, basically Charlie was like, this Shane guy, you got to see this.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I was like, all right, cause I kind of peripherally knew what was, who he was and what he was doing here and, stuff like that. So, I do a racing podcast actually. So, so these types of things are generally in my periphery, along with, beverages and food service, but, nonetheless, that's where we're at.
Nice.
IndyCar, Tim. It's our bread and butter.
It is.
You watched this one.
Of course I did.
Good
I watched
race.
It in 2 segments. I didn't watch it live. I watched it in 2 segments.
Totally fair. Good race.
But I did. Yeah. Yeah, it was a good race. It was
good race. Good race. The Palou Juggernaut notwithstanding. That's also another complicated phrase. I don't know who's doing these scripts these days. The Palou Juggernaut notwithstanding. First, though, Timmy, we have to talk about Pagenaud's crash and Connor's fill-in effort. This was about as bad as I'd seen in a while. I remember the Andretti crash Right? I remember watching that live.
So do I.
In some ways, I think that Pagenaud's crash this past weekend seemed a little more violent to me. I think it was certainly faster.
I think so too, but it was
yeah. Think about what goes
through
your mind.
Let me just say they were very similar with the
Michael had already hit the guardrail, so he was scrubbing speed before he went off that hill.
I see. Okay.
Right? Where I think Simon, 180 miles an hour screaming down that straightaway, pushes the brake, and the brake is out to lunch. And I think he turned it because when he went off the hill sideways. So I think he tried to turn it, maybe tried to scrub speed as well, but it was pretty violent. I can't imagine what it would be like to be going 60 miles an hour and coming off an off ramp and you push the brakes and there's nothing there, let alone 100.
Yeah, what do you do, right? Yeah.
What do you do? What do you do? Right?
Seems to what Pagenaud did was kind of the right thing, right? You turn hard right, and then you sort of let it go from there, and it was airborne until it hit the sand, and then for sure.
Yeah. Amazing job by the AMR safety team to be on site so quickly. I mean, they were running through that sand, with the gear on and everything else, and they got to him pretty fast. And I'll say, and I've said it a million times, IndyCar gets it right when it comes to the safety team and what they bring to the track every time. I think they do it, I think, second to none, period.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. They're quick. They're on the spot, ready to go. We saw them in turn 1 in Detroit. They were right there. If anything happened, they were immediately deployed. So they've got that figured. IndyCar's had that figured out. They got that figured out. They'll continue to do really well in that sort of scenario in those episodes. And when I saw the incident, the thing that sort of made me sort of have a sigh of relief is that you didn't hit anything hard. I know that's relative. You barrel rolled, but it wasn't like you slammed against the wall and you came to a complete sudden stop. I think that's when you see a lot of injuries. So that gives you idea that runoff area is big enough for a car going that fast in order to slow it down before you actually hit the wall. And I think it might have tumbled on it at the very end, but just a little bit, but it wasn't a violent hit into the wall.
No. Violent, but it certainly could have been worse, right? If they didn't have that level of runoff, if they didn't have that distance where he could have scrubbed the speed, and obviously the barrel roll took some of the speed away too. He certainly had his bell rung. There's no doubt about that. That he was. Yeah. I didn't think that there was any way he was going to race on Sunday after watching that crash. I don't think there was any. To me, that was foregone conclusion, which means timing is everything. Right. Connor Daly on his podcast, he said, "Hey, I'm going to go to Road America. I'm going to be there as a spectator." And I think timing for Connor couldn't have been better. Who else would you have put in that car? I mean, Shane could have just withdrew the car, or he could have put an Indy Lights guy in there, or Indy Next, or whoever else is hanging around. Right. Charlie Kimball, I think, hangs around track, and he's a Indy Next, I think, coach. But who else would you have put in there that had that level of experience, that recent level of experience?
Zach Veach.
Yeah, I don't think he's got that level of experience either. So I think he's coaching too, right?
For Aero, he's doing some of the simulator stuff, I believe, for Aero.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I saw his tweet where he missed his flight and had to drive 9 hours to get to Mid-Ohio.
I saw that. Okay, there you go.
Missed it, or it got canceled.
That's closing the loop for me. Yeah. Hey, and kudos to Mrs. Mom, right? To Connor's mom, Mrs. Bowles, right? She's on her way to watch the younger son do some karting or whatever on the north end of Indianapolis, and goes bolting around town. She gets to Connor's condo. She gets to ECR to pick up his seat, and she goes bolting on, the probably 3-4 hour trip from Indianapolis to Lexington, Ohio. Yeah, it's Columbus, right? I mean, so she goes bolting out there to bring him his stuff so he can be ready to race. So, so good for him. Good for Connor, good for his mom. I mean, that's cool that you've got that level of support at home. That's really great.
Yeah, I think it's cool that Connor's just there to support IndyCar and to, see his friends and see what's going on. And then all of a sudden this happens and you're launched into a seat with Meyer Shank and off you go.
Right. I think also too, kind of a wonderful opportunity for Shank to get what do you want to say here? To get kind of a fresh perspective on your setups, even though it's Andretti Autosport that's helping you with engineering and things, but you're still getting the same feedback, be it Simon or Elio. And they're not performing at the level that the Andretti guys are. None of them, right? For 4-4.
No.
So all
So I don't know how
guys.
much help they are, but
right. So kind of cool to have
talked about,
Connor
right?
in there.
Like,
oh yeah, we've talked about it.
Yeah.
So to have Connor in there to tell you, hey, here's, based on my experience, right? Because it wasn't going great at ECR either, but in Connor's experience, he could at least give you kind of some perspective on whatever baseline it is that ECR was working on, as well as from a Chevy perspective too.
Mm-hmm.
So, so good opportunity for them. Timing is everything. We're not going to talk about it, so I'm going to talk about it here. They didn't make the Power 5, so that blows my cover. I didn't pick them for my Power 5 team. But
I didn't think you would.
Yeah, I wasn't going to do that. But he finished ahead of Elio. And Timmy, he damn near caught the guy that he that replaced him in his old car.
Yeah. He sure did. I saw that battle go on, or that that close call where they would be, battling. So I don't think there's any ill will when it comes to that.
No, I don't think so either. But that's who you want to beat.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Yeah,
that's who you want to beat. So 30 minutes of practice. That's all he got. Morning warm up.
That's it, right? And
goes
in the car and off you go.
20th. Yeah, his old car number.
Hopefully the seat bolted down good enough that it doesn't come flying out.
Yeah, he was fine. He made it. So, but good for him. It was good to see. So, whatever happens to him in his career, I know he's running trucks this weekend at Mid-Ohio, and he'll run some other things too. I mean, by and large, seems like be a nice guy. He'll land somewhere, right in the booth. Although I keep saying that in the booth, that to me is not. That's like a third sort of tier place I'd think to see him, but nonetheless, it's not my opinion, or it's not my call, right? Just my
time will tell.
Any other thoughts on the weekend, Timmy, before we get into the Power 5?
No, I thought
Tim's moving a lot of screens around. Are we podcasting? Are we working? What are we doing?
I am. I've got two screens. I got you over here. I got you over here. So I'm kind of going back and forth to both. But I was impressed with the crowd. It's 4th of July weekend, so it's a great family atmosphere. If you've never been, Dan, I know you and I have been. We haven't really camped there, but definitely been to the races there, and it's a great venue. I think overall they put on a good show. It's in a great area. They've got the fan base there's a lot of fan base in Ohio, so it's important to have this event. I think it's important to maybe expand and have another event in Ohio, but that's to TBD. But at the end of the day,
Cincinnati,
all good. Yeah,
Toledo,
Cincinnati would be awesome.
What are you referring to?
Yeah, Cleveland, maybe. The whole Cleveland thing is what I was sort of thinking, because that was a great event too on Burke Lakefront Airport. And
it was phenomenal.
Stands and how it all kind of went. I know I'm going way off track on this, but you started throwing out cities. Cincinnati,
because you were dancing around it. I needed to hear you say Cleveland,
because I knew you were going to roll your eyes as soon as I said it.
I was there with Bill from Shelby. I had a great time.
Yeah,
had a great time. Cleveland. I'd love it to come back.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's a great event. It was a great event. We'll put it in those terms. So yeah, I had another point, but I totally blanked on it. But
sorry. You're trying to think of that Toledo street race, I'm sure.
Well, being my hometown,
Maumee River, baby.
I think I could see it happen down there. I could probably lay it out if they needed me to.
Hey, Fifth Third Bank has that giant building right there on the riverfront, right? So
they used to. I don't know if it says Fifth Third anymore.
I don't know if
it
does
that would be perfect for Graham. Yeah. Yeah. So
I used to go to a meeting. There. I used to go to a meeting in that building once a month, and I did for years. And like door to door, it was like 46 minutes or something to the parking lot.
Oh my goodness.
And then I'd park and I would walk underground. Our we have people turning off the podcast at this point. Walking underground, I'd come in and sit down. It was like 46 minutes from where I live to that meeting in Toledo. So,
well, you're closer to Toledo than I am for sure. These days. So, yeah, around the corner.
Power 5, Timmy. It's a familiar story. Chip Ganassi Racing, Alex Palou.
I know what I was going to say now.
Oh, say
Hold on. Pause. They're all turned off now. No one's listening.
Yeah, nobody's listening. Just me and you.
Just it's amazing. Every time we watch Mid-Ohio, limited cautions, right? Limited cautions, caution-free race. You've got the one that happens at the beginning, which I know we'll talk about, but then you don't have anything the whole race, which I don't mind. But I think there's probably fans that wouldn't mind them to bunch it up, stack it up a little bit. But it is what it is, right? That's racing, right? And if you have penalties, which I'm sure we'll talk about, if we got penalties, you're going to be penalized and you're not going to make it up because there's caution after caution after caution. So I love the road circuit and that aspect. And I just love the disciplines that you have to have when you drive IndyCar because, road course at Road America. Here you got another road course, moving to a street course. You got oval, like this all comes into play in winning the championship. And you got one guy, which is going to get us into the Power 5. Now you got one guy that's been excelling. So
let's call him a juggernaut.
Onto the Power 5. I know. It's crazy.
Right. The Dan Patrick line, right? You can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. I don't know who's left to contain Alex Palou on this run, right? 3 in a row, 4 out of the last 5. He's now 110 points clear of his second place teammate. Not that teammate. In this championship. I asked after Road America, is this it for the championship? Will Power said it's now a fight for second. Tim, do you agree with Slick Willie P?
Yeah. I think he listened to the podcast because that's what I said last week or 2 weeks ago. It was over.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I love it. I'll have to go. I never listen to our podcast, as you know. I never listen to our show.
And you don't listen to when I talk either. You're ready.
I'm just trying to get through the notes, dude.
Just
trying to get through the notes.
So
it's a battle for second.
Totally a battle for second. There's no way no one is catching Palou.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that.
I know.
And I'd hate to go into the rest of the season thinking, okay, who's the best of the rest? Because that's what we're dealing with now. Who was your pick last for Mid-Ohio? Who was your pick to win?
Do you?
Will Power.
Yeah, Will Power. 3rd place. I was close.
Will Power. 3rd place. Who was mine?
I don't know. I have it written down.
Scott Dixon.
2nd place.
2nd place. Yeah. We picked the best of the rest. And I'm not trying to toot our own horns, but it's...
You know what's funny?
I think, so it goes right to your point.
Are we just like reluctant to pick Palou?
Because
it's like the obvious choice, right?
Yeah, I didn't want to pick him. I picked him the week before it. Road America. I wasn't going to do it again for Mid-Ohio. So I'm like, let's go with Scott Dixon. Scott Dixon has a great track record, so it's not a bad pick.
Award was the win, and Lundgaard was my dark horse. And Lundgaard ended up finishing for Mid-Ohio.
Oh, I thought you had
Lundgaard ended up finishing 4th, right?
Yeah, great showing.
Award had an issue, right, with qualifying, but he comported himself well. We'll talk about it.
He had his own issue.
And
it was no issue but his own issue.
Right. That's true. Dixon win and Felix Rosenquist for your dark horse.
Yeah.
Who we're going to talk about, right? They're going to feature in this thing. So
yeah.
That's my old notes, which hadn't been filed yet. But so it's over. I agree with you at this point. I think the consistency that everybody else is showing at this point, or the consistency that he's showing versus the people who are really in the seat to try to do something. Newgarden, we're going to talk about it. Consistency's not there.
Yeah, so that's
awards consistency.
Think of that scenario.
It's not there. The one that is Dixon. Ericsson had this one hiccup, but otherwise they've been very, very consistent.
Yeah, and I think this is the only way someone gets back into this, and I think the only person that can get back into this is Newgarden. He's the only guy that can get back into it. And you got to look at Iowa and go, how does Palou get 2 DNFs? And how does Newgarden sweep both of those races, which he almost did last year?
He did, yeah. Mechanical, right, for that second one. So.
Yeah, mechanical. So you clean that up. Yeah. That is your only way, I think, there's a fight down to Laguna.
Everybody else is good this year, though, Tim. So, I mean, that's the thing. about IndyCar. I talk a lot about this car being such an old car and everything else, but every year it anything could happen at this point, right? Arrow McLaren could go in there and really be just steamroll the rest of the field.
I don't think they
ECR
can.
could go in there and steamroll. It's not a guarantee. It's better than average shot for Newgarden, but no guarantee that Newgarden goes into Iowa, goes into Gateway, and just steamrolls the field.
Yeah. So speaking of Arrow, I see Award is too erratic, right? You can't have, he's not going to go through and knock him off one after another. Rossi, for some reason this year, is fading every race. Qualifies decent. He seems to fade. If he qualifies sort of bad, he moves up a little bit. But if he's in a good qualifying position, he doesn't finish where he qualified. And then Felix, I think, is just kind of, you never know what you're going to get. I think
watch
with
yourself
him,
when you're talking
it's
about
one of
Felix.
those. Yeah.
Watch yourself.
What's that?
So watch yourself when you're talking about Felix.
You jinxed him. What happened at Road America? You bought his jersey, and then gets run over.
Yeah.
At Mid Ohio, you got to burn it. You got to burn it. So
no way.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this earlier today of could anybody catch Palou? And I think your only bet, and let me just give you my reasoning why I don't think it's Dixon, because I think if Dixon's good, Palou's good. Yeah. And you put them two next to each other at this point in their career, who's better straight up at this point? If you got the same car and you both like the setup on that car, who's better, right? Palou's going to most likely win the event. So,
right.
Yeah, it's tough. I think you got to leave it up to Team Penske, and I think there's one guy in Team Penske that might be able to make it a battle. And I'll stop on that.
Yeah. Dixon, as you mentioned, right? He's that teammate now, meaning he's second in the championship. Ericsson, it's that tight. Ericsson had his hiccup and it pushed him down in the championship. Now Dixie's in that second place, finishes second at Mid Ohio. I don't know that comes as a surprise to anybody. He's the winningest driver at Mid Ohio, right? He has more wins at Mid Ohio than any other driver with 6. And here's another nugget for you. I got this from the broadcast. This is Scott Dixon's 20th race at Mid Ohio and his first second place finish, which is also his best finish of the season.
Yeah.
Right. But he's still second in this championship. No wins. So what's that telling you, Joseph Newgarden? 110 points behind Palou, only 6 points ahead of Newgarden, but ahead of Newgarden nonetheless. I have to say this. Dixon has 5 top 5 finishes and 8 top 10 finishes. Newgarden has 3 top 5s and 6 top 10s. That's that lack of consistency, right? That's hurting Newgarden. Hurt him last year too. 5 wins last year. Still finished second in this championship. Plus, Newgarden has 2 wins, as I mentioned. Dixie's still blank on that side of the board. He historically been very strong at Toronto. He could be strong at Toronto again. He won there last year. He's got some other wins in him too, certainly, right, coming down the road. The ovals, again, I would put others ahead of him. Newgarden being one of them. I think Award being another, but he'll be in the mix. I bring this up because Newgarden has been runner-up 3 years in a row. Runner-up in the championship 3 years in a row, 20, 21, and 22. Won the championship in 19, right? We'll talk about him a little bit more later on. But this is the story, right, from here forward. This is the second half of the season, and this is definitely the story going forward. Armstrong, your guy, Marcus Armstrong, the new Marcus. Nothing to hang his head on about this finish. I think, he's still learning IndyCar, and I think he'll no doubt be in the conversation in year 2. We're starting to hear this in the universe now about Marcus in his year 2, and he might be running ovals. And Mike Hull was on record saying they're trying to get him a test for ovals and things like that. It's probably why they didn't get him in the ovals that are coming up. But
surprised by that move.
I am and I'm not.
To put him...
Yeah, I am and I'm not. I think they just didn't have an opportunity to get him into a test. And I think you want to at least test him on any of those ovals before you put him in it.
Yeah, I guess you could have a different driver shake the car down and make sure it's ready to go and then put it in. But I get it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Sato or any of his teammates, right? I mean,
I know. Just throw him in there. Go.
Yep. 27th place, Ericsson, dead last, right? This is by far the most unexpected finish, in my opinion, for Marcus Ericsson. Had a little sweet on sweet crime He had a coming together with Felix Rosenqvist in that first in the opening part of the race, which helped him finish last. Team did get him back on track, but it was in vain. You want to talk about adding insult to injury, though, right?
IndyCar, why do you even do that? It's terrible.
Levied a penalty, 45-second stop and go. Oy. Why?
Yeah,
the guy's what, 40 laps down? I mean,
yeah.
If you're going to apply,
I don't even bring the car back out. I don't even know why you bring the car back out.
They ended up tucking him away, right? Like, I don't think there was anything to accomplish by having him out there. So I think they rolled it away anyway. So
they did, and then he's actually finished 75 laps down. So I don't know what they brought him out for.
No idea.
No idea. Terrible.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it was just unlike. So talking about Ericsson, not his type of move. He mentioned that he just screwed it up and drove over Felix. So, it's his first time out of the top 10 in finishes this whole season, and it hurt him. He fell quite a few spots in the championship fight. But, those are things that could happen to Palou when you talk about the championship and what's going on. That if he has a bad finish like that and people are able to capitalize on it, maybe you could tighten this up. But someone's got to go on a run. Yeah, to catch him.
Ericsson dropped 2 places in the championship by finishing last year.
Yeah,
it's that close, right? It's that close.
Yep.
Power 2, Penske, right? And again, it's willpower. Mr. Nonchalant Consistency is back, right? Though qualifying prowess is just not there yet. Seems to have lost a little bit of that edge. Nonetheless, I think he's back with some consistency and smart racecraft. I don't think anybody could question that. That willpower has very, very smart racecraft out there. Power started 7th, worked his magic, kept his head to finish 3rd, which I think for racing for 2nd, as he said, this is what you want to do. And I think he did it effectively.
He did, after coming out of Road America, where a lot of stuff happened and went down.
It's weird, yeah.
Comes in here, he drives well, he finishes, up the charts there, which is good. And I want to bring up this new pavement in turn 1 and Penske and what they did at Road America. And there was conversation about how they weren't as good on smooth tracks as they are on rough tracks based on what they've done with their damper program, I'm assuming. So I'm not saying turn 1 had anything to do with it. I'm just saying it's one of those scenarios that it was called out that they need to do better on tracks that are smooth and don't have a lot of bumps. So I wonder, as you look
overall,
forward,
you would call Road or Mid Ohio smooth. I mean, certainly compared to Detroit, certainly compared to Toronto, Nashville. I think you would call it smooth. Yeah.
So maybe there's some missteps there. Other teams have figured that out. I think you got to look towards potentially next year when they repave the whole track, is what I sort of heard, and what comes of it then. So I think Penske's focused on that. 3rd place finish is obviously great for Power. Propels him up in the championship fight, and see where he goes from there.
Yeah, keeps him in the mix, that's for sure. McLaughlin finishes 5th. Kind of a weird day for Scott. Qualifying wasn't great, wasn't bad either. I mean, he qualified 8th, which isn't really horrendous, but he got held up by the rolling red chicane known as Benjamin Peterson, who we're going to talk about. But in the closing stages of that race, he had to fight harder than he needed to behind a guy who was going a lap down, right?
Yeah.
Who was racing for 25th by himself, and he held up a lot of drivers. But not sure how much Scotty Mack would have had for Lundgaard if he'd have caught him. My guess is he probably would have had he would have had something for him. Whether or not he would have gotten around him, remains to be seen. But the race between those two would have been nice to see, as opposed to the train behind Peterson. 12th place, Timmy. Joseph Newgarden. Again, poor qualifying performance for Joseph, followed by a less than ideal finish. 12th place. If you're if you're Elio Castroneves, Simon Pagenaud, Connor Daly, whatever, right? You'd be high-fiving yourself for a 12th place finish, but not when you're in the mix for this championship. Not when you're the Indy 500 winner this year either.
You qualified 15th.
Yeah, and I got to talk about that because, and this aggravates me to no end.
I love the camera view showing him walk.
Tim, that drives me crazy. right? Okay, so Ryan Hunter-Reay qualifies 17th, right? Newgarden qualifies 15th.
15th.
Goes pouting off. Keeps his helmet on, goes pouting off. Out to the trailer, right?
He did sign an autograph, though, didn't he?
Yeah, one kid, and he couldn't get away from him fast enough, and he knew that he was on camera, okay? But you know who sat and got on TV with Kevin Lee for his sponsors and for his team? Ryan Hunter-Reay.
Your boy. Yeah.
Yeah. Captain America. Right? So that's right.
Fourth, you got to put him on.
Indy 500 winner, face of the series, one of them, if not the, right? And the best we can do is him pouting off, right? Stomping his. He wasn't stomping.
It's every his feet, time. There's never.
It's every time.
Yeah.
Get over yourself, dude. It's a tough series.
Yeah, you're not going to qualify in the top 12 every race, even though you maybe should at Penske. But you got to take the good with the bad, right? And roll with it. I
manage people. I don't manage people who make millions of dollars, right? I manage people. I don't manage people who make millions of dollars. I would have no reservation whatsoever to have a conversation with them that says, dude, I know it sucks. Okay. I know you want to do better. That's why you're in the car. You gotta take your helmet off professionally. Talk to your engineers and the people on the pit stand. And when Kevin Lee comes up or Dylan Welch with the microphone, say, hey, we just didn't have it today. We missed and turned whatever it was, blah, blah, blah. I expect you to take those lumps. I expect you to put PPG on TV in that scenario, as opposed to walking, pouting away to your RV.
Mm-hmm.
I would have no reservation to have that conversation. So
I think it's a conversation that needs to be had.
It does.
Because you want to know, like, people want to know, like, what happened, right? Especially your fans. They're like, what happened? And it's good to, I don't know. It's good to talk about your problems, I guess, right? And say, hey, this is what we did. Or maybe I screwed up in a corner and I messed up. Or maybe traffic was bad and it just didn't work out. We had the car underneath us. It's just not where we need to be. But at the end of the day, it really didn't have it underneath them because you didn't move up much from where you started. So it's just a bad setup, I guess.
The king of qualifying, right? King of qualifying qualifies 7th. He misses the transfer into the Fast Six. King of qualifying in IndyCar.
Mm-hmm.
Modern king, right? What's he do?
And
it's tight, man. It's tight, right? I mean, he gets on TV, talks about it, and then he leaves.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
And the expectation is you're willpower, dude. You should be in the Fast Six every time.
Yeah. You know who put a wrench in this whole qualification that we keep talking about? One team.
Rail.
Exactly.
And they're next.
I know. There's
Wait,
one
what?
team that the reason we're talking about,
we're going to talk about Rahal in the Power 5 as the Power 3rd team. Well, of course we are, because it's a road course.
There's 2 big teams missing out of the 4 that we always talk about, which is great. This is what IndyCar's about, right? Yeah. So you have the usual suspects up front, and then all of a sudden you get into number 3 and number 4. It's not the usual suspects, and that's what we all like about IndyCar, right? That's what we come to, expect. Palou going on this string is a little different for us, but that's okay.
Yeah. Lundgaard, 4th place. No surprise here. We saw live firsthand, right? What he did at Indy GP and at Road America, took pole there.
You saw live at Road America too, yeah.
I saw it live, yeah. If this team can get street courses sorted, Tim, I think Lundgaard will be mixing it up weekly.
He's got talent. There's no question about that. It's just the team coming together. And it feels like they've got it on road courses. It's going to be telling when you get to Toronto and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's going to be telling to see what comes out of this.
Yeah, I hope for something different, but I'm just expecting Detroit.
Yeah, you just have to go back to the last street course and go, what did they do?
Yeah,
nothing. They had
horrible. I mean, that was right.
So
we keep saying
this.
Oh, that was rock bottom. It was rock bottom. Oh yeah. I mean, Graham crashed on his own, right under yellow. The car was so bad it wouldn't turn. Right.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Unlike Lewis Hamilton, though, he wasn't calling out track limits. Sorry.
There's no track limits here at Detroit. You're off track limits. You're in the fence.
Yeah, you're in a wall. 7th place, Graham Rahal. This is really the story, Tim. This really is the story, right? Graham qualifies second, which is
this the coming of Graham? Is the second coming of Graham?
Maybe, right? Qualifies second. It's a big deal. It's a big deal because of the woes this team has had over the past several seasons, capped off, of course, by missing the Indy 500.
Mm-hmm.
Second, because Graham considers this a home race. It's a big deal. At the start, I didn't have the highest expectations, to be honest. You and I observed at the Indy GP that these cars were not great during a stint, right? They were falling off fast. So they're getting there, right, with their setups and their programming, but he wasn't there over the stint. Tim, he spent a lot of time second to Herta, purposely or otherwise, but Colton was never able to shake Graham. He was always within.
No, he was.
I mean, really within a second of him.
He was tight. Those two were running
very tight. Yeah.
There was a gap between Graham and third place at the time.
Yeah. So, spent a lot of time second to Herta. Herta really couldn't get away from him, and he was in a position to set up a pass a couple of times, but kind of, fell away from that. So, to me, 7th place, I think this is a very, very respectable finish. This is a big deal, right? This is a big deal. Graham was hanging his head on this thing. He was kind of mopey. He had the mopey face. I'm sure he was hoping for a win, but geez, Graham, based on where you've been this year alone, just Graham, let alone the team, dude, celebrate the 7th place. Celebrate the fact that it looks like maybe it's right. It's a dawn and not a false dawn. Had a fuel hose problem in the first pit stop. And I think the one that really took him out was the pit stop where they had the trouble with the left rear tire, where they had to get the car back up on the jack. The TV kind of falsely identified it as a stall, but then, properly identified it that it was a problem with the left rear tire. So he got that in, back release, back on track, and then, this was his finish to be. Big deal for Graham. Go ahead.
It is. I'd be mopey as well. Like I
probably would be too. It's easy for me to say this, right? I'm sitting here in a chair talking into a microphone.
If you could clean up pit stops, you got a very, very good car underneath you.
Yeah.
Graham can wheel it around the track. You're going to have a much better finish than what you did. So I'd be mopey because we put part of the program together, not all the program. And there's probably times where you're running in the back of the field and the crew puts the work in and they do their job when it comes to pit stops, but the car isn't good enough to be up front. So I think you finally got to a point that the car's here at the front of the grid, and then you have a couple hiccups that you'd normally don't have. And it could just be the pressure. You're running second. You haven't been running second all season long, and all of a sudden the fuel hose doesn't go in. Right. And then you come in again and you lose spots there, right? So think of the team mentality. Oh no, we messed up on the pit stop. We got this next one coming up. Let's not make a mistake. And now it's the left rear. So I'd be disappointed in it myself. I think a top 5 you'd go, but finish 7th.
That team has not been in a position to have pit stops count the way that they counted for Graham during this race.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they have to rise to the occasion. There's no doubt about it, but they've also they've not been under fire in that way in quite some time.
Well, yeah. And I think
they've been fighting for 15th and 18th place. Yeah.
It was down to
sure it is, but the whole team is down to coaching. I've been saying that for all season. The whole team, top to bottom, is all about coaching, right? Who's in charge? I've said that before. Who's the one in there pounding on the desk when you need to pound on the desk, and who's the one in there holding a hand when you need to hold a hand? I don't really know.
Yeah.
You know who was on the boot? You know who was on the stand this week with a headset on? Bobby Rahal, the guy whose name's on the building, right? First time I saw that in a long time.
Yep. Shaking his head at the guy that did the tire change or something. That's what I saw.
Yeah. So good for him, because that's what you're supposed to do when your name is on the building.
Yeah. Be present.
Right? Yes.
I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying from an outsider's view. Yeah.
18th place, Jack Harvey. I have no idea what happened here. And dude, I have carried the water, man. I'm a fan. I have been a fan. I feel like he got a short changed. here with this move to this team. I just feel like this is it, right? I think this is a foregone conclusion. He won't be back next year. I don't know where he'll be. I hope he lands somewhere good. I really do. I hope he lands somewhere good, but I don't know.
You already think he's gone?
I do. I'm starting to feel that way, Tim.
I don't know. I was feeling that way too until I heard that him and Graham are good buddies, and I've seen them doing different things together. So I don't think he's gone. I think he'll be back next year. But yeah, he qualified 11th, which still top 12. All 3 cars in the top 12.
Yeah,
and then just doesn't move.
You know who didn't have all 3 cars in the top 12? Penske.
Yeah,
McLaren.
Close, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So good for Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan Racing. They did a good job. Yeah. I think people are expecting them to show up at road courses now, so they're now going to shift focus and go, can they put a complete race together? Which I think Lundgaard did, right? Totally put a complete race.
Totally.
Ray Hall kind of bobbled a little bit, but it wasn't no fault of his own.
Nope. He did everything right. He did what he was supposed to do.
Yeah. And so I think it's going to be interesting. What's the expectation going into Toronto? Where are they going to fall? What's positive for them? 1 car in the top 6 when it comes to qualification, or is it getting a couple cars in the fast 12? Like, how does that sort of play out? And what deems success for them at a street course now and other events as we move forward?
Not all 3 cars in the wall, I think, will be success on a street car. I have no expectations for this team in Toronto at all, based on what they performed in Detroit, which was just a few weeks ago. I don't know that you're going to turn the program around that quickly, especially how long it's taken them to turn it around now. I don't know how long they're going to turn around Toronto, our first street course.
Well,
I really don't. I know Lundgaard said, well, last year Toronto was like the start of the resurgence for us and whatever else. And it's like, yeah, I don't know about that, dude.
Well,
because Detroit certainly didn't show. St. Pete, they don't come to mind when I think of St. Pete.
No, but you got to think back to...
Don't come to mind when I think of Long Beach either. So
yeah, but you got to think back to last year at Toronto. Graham finished 4th overall, so he finished the race 4th. Lundgaard was 8th. So you've got teams that you got good results last year. So maybe there's a little more expectation than what we think coming into Toronto this year, but I wouldn't count them out based on what I saw.
The full race results in front of you, or just the guys?
Just the guy, and I could get to the full race results. What's your question?
How many cars finished on the lead lap?
Finished on the lead lap. 20 cars finished on the lead lap last year.
7 were out.
Yep, 7 were out. Jimmy Johnson, Kirkwood, Rossi, Dalton, and Sato were out.
Yeah.
So 5 cars were out. 25 cars last year.
Yeah, I don't know. Smaller field.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Coin, Tim. 4th team.
That's awesome.
And here's the deal. David Malukas already said he wants to bail. I'm out of here, dude.
He did.
Right? And then what does he do? He turns around, finishes 6th. Right? And it's taken a long time to get to this point of the season to turn around this program. Coyne lost some people in the off season, which is not unusual for Dale Coyne Racing. But it seems like the reload, the quote unquote reload that he normally puts in place during these exits of quality people, it just really hasn't happened. So sounds like HMD, at least from what David said when he announced that he wouldn't be back. Sounds like HMD, which is, Malukas's dad's company. They field 9 or whatever, Indy Next cars, but they've offered some support. No idea what that means. Sounds like it wasn't accepted at Coyne, which is fine. I mean, it's Dale's team, so Dale gets to do what he wants. 12th place start, 6th place finish. I think it's a good job. I really do. But here's what I really want to talk about. I want to talk about the FBI raiding your house. I want to talk about, we'll set that aside for now. But I want to talk about, if you're David Malukas, where do you go? Ganassi or Andretti?
Those seem like the likely spots, right? For him to
me, they are. Honda teams, yeah.
I think you're headed to, gosh. Are you asking me to answer that, or?
Yeah.
I think you go to Ganassi, I think is where you head. Given Ericsson's, and this is obviously Marcus Ericsson's position, I think you kind of float over there and you get that seat. You're bringing budget, right? So
I think you are.
apparently,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think
So
you
you
bring
bring
some
in
budget.
budget. I think that's where I'd want to go. That's the number one team, as everybody knows. I think Andretti is sort of a wild card when it comes to
Hit or
setups.
miss.
And if
Yep.
you're there, and Indy isn't so great for them when it comes to the 500, they just haven't had the setup in the last few years. So if I got a choice, it's always Ganassi right now.
Yeah. And if not, the 29 at Andretti Autosport. The 29 always seems to be
you're thinking that
the
Devlin's
team.
going to be gone, right?
Yep, I think so. The 29 seems to be the team that is that, I don't want to call it the ride buyer, but it's the team that generally the driver has budget. And I think David Malukas is more than a ride buyer, right? He's a quality talent.
I think so too.
Quality budget with his dad, and his dad is all in on this thing. Given what he's done with the Indy Next teams. So I think either one of those. I think if the choice is yours, and I think it is kind of Malukas's choice, to be honest with you, because Ganassi's going to have 2 spots to fill. I think it is Malukas's choice, and I think if he does have that choice, I think he goes to Ganassi. I text Spencer, right, IndyCar1909.com about this, and he largely agrees about Ganassi because of the budget situation. But here's a curveball that Spencer threw at me. I'm going to throw it at you now. See if you can hit this one.
Mm-hmm.
Rahal.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be clamoring to get over there, though.
I don't think anybody would be.
Yeah. And why would you want to bring budget? They seem to have sponsors after sponsors show up
Seem
on
to be
those
doing
cars.
just fine on that. Yeah.
So if I'm bringing budget, I'm not knocking on their door to come drive their cars for sure. So,
but if they knock on yours and say, the seat's yours, right? Yours if you want it. We'll paint it black, white, and we'll put the HMD on the side of it. Seat's yours if you want it. What do you say?
You're gonna pay me too. I don't know.
Maybe that's the situation, right? Yeah, I'm not gonna pay you to drive there, but I'll pay Ganassi to drive there.
Mm-hmm.
Might pay Andretti a little bit to drive there.
Yeah, I think you got to come with budget to get in that car.
Yeah,
it's just
it's not a shot, by the way, against Rahal, because they are getting it together, right? But if you're in the position that David Malukas is, with that money in hand, solid money in hand, that money's not going away, right? His family's not dabbling in this thing. They're in, right? I think you've got choices. And I think that might be one of those. I appreciate the offer. I want to see how it plays out. Right?
Unless you're looking for ownership down the line.
I don't think, maybe.
Then maybe you're at RL.
Neither R nor the first L or the second L are getting any younger. And they're not young to begin with.
And that's what I was alluding to. Like maybe that's where you head.
Maybe. It's a good point. I thought I'd throw that at you. Stingray Rob finishes 22nd. He finished, and that's a start. I'm not being mean. I'm just saying the kid needs to bring the car home in one piece, and that's been a challenge.
Yep.
It's been a tall learning curve for Stingray Rob. I expected a little bit more out of him this season. Not much more, but I expected a little more out of him this season, and it's just been a mess.
Yeah. But to your point, the team hasn't done great all year.
No.
So it's hard as a rookie to come in and do well when the team's not apparently not, clicking on all 4 cylinders, if you will.
Very coin-like. Who's your power fifth?
Oh, this is really, really difficult. I almost was going to sit here and say I don't have one, was kind of what I wanted to really sort of say. But as I've been thinking about it throughout the day, actually, I've been thinking about it. And I have to go. Say that again?
I said, I'll believe you this once.
Yeah, well, I have been. And I think the team that I have, and there's only one person on this team, is why I'm really going here. Is my Power 5 ranking goes to Team Andretti.
Oh, okay.
Andretti Autosport, and the reason for that is qualification. And this sounds corny for sure, but you got Herta, who's had 2 poles in a row. They've got it figured out. They haven't put it together. Herta obviously had some issues in the race, but overall, I would do it for that reason, just to say they're there. I know they've been there. They didn't make the top 4 like they normally do, but overall, it's not a great showing. They had, and maybe the other side of this is they had no inner team arguments at Mid Ohio like they did last year. So
Oh yeah, last year was rough.
They've had some issues at Mid Ohio, and it came out to it still squeaky clean, and they'll move on. So I think they can take some good high points from just qualification and what they did in that realm.
Yeah.
So
2 poles in a row for Colton Herta. It's a great pick, and 2 different strategists in that time as well.
I know there's a lot of shuffling going on in that strategy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Third strategist there.
We're unsure why, but at the same time, if they can, and they just barely beat Graham Rahal. Graham Rahal was very close to being on the pole, and it was a last lap effort. And
it looked like it was going to happen.
So he showed his skill, and the team showed their ability to, rise to the top when I didn't think they were going to get it.
Yeah. Colton finished 11th. Romain Grosjean was 13th. Also a very quality race for him too. He didn't do any landscaping. He didn't have any issues there like he did at Road America. He didn't wreck the car. He took a couple of shots. We're going to talk about that in the grid walk, but he took a couple of shots at the team. 13th. Devlin finishes 14th and Kirkwood 17th from a 3rd place finish for Kyle Kirkwood. So it wasn't able to convert that into a top 5 or even a top 10. So I think it's a good pick, Tim. I really do. It's interesting to see how this team kind of has lost its way versus the first few races of the season. And they've kind of gone a little bit. The team has lost its way because Herta's come on board, right? Where Herta was kind of a one-man show in the early part, where it was the Kirkwood and Grosjean show in the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
So, who knows what's going on behind the scenes.
You got Kirkwood, who won at Long Beach.
Yep.
Yeah.
Grosjean, who could have won at St. Pete, who was in the top 5 at Texas, right? Yeah. So, who knows?
I think you set yourself up well to have some good results here, as you mentioned, right? Herta on pole, Kirkwood 3rd. You could have easily been up there. Kirkwood, again, a little too aggressive, in my opinion, and you spin it, and you end up finishing down in 17th, and you have some other issues, obviously, because he had a fast car, and Herta had his problems too. So, and then Devlin comes up from 24th, whatever he qualified, and finishes 14th. That's a really good showing for
him.
Devlin.
Yeah, a really good showing. I went with Aaron McLaren. Not the sexiest choice, not the most calculated choice. They were next up on the list. But I in particular, I went with Pato O'Ward. And the reason why I say that is because O'Ward finished 8th. He started 25th. He has been erratic, and he's been kind of a pinball, right, for several races this season. And we've talked about that a lot here. He's immensely talented. Team is stronger than ever. I was worried about how he comes through the field on that, from 25th. I wasn't sure he was going to even make it to the finish, to be honest with you. Really, without pissing off a lot of people in the process. So, but he ran a clean race. He did what he needed to do, and he brought home a good points total, which is where you need to be. He's definitely in the battle for second. I believe that. But he has to demonstrate this level of skill and maturity to remain in that conversation, because you're going up against the likes of Dixon and Newgarden, who has 2 wins on the season, and Ericsson, who's very, very consistent. 10th place goes to Alexander Rossi. He's now 8th in the championship. 4 top 5s, 7 top 10s. Tim, that's quality program right now. That's a very quality program. And Rossi's program's coming together. It's coming together nicely. Much, much better than I expected. I had Rossi in 9th place in the championship. You had him 8th. And I think we kept him in just out of respect for who he was, and we like him. But he's fit in better and faster on this team than I think I expected. Felix Rosenqvist, 25th. Mentioned earlier, he got run over by Marcus Ericsson. Literally run over by Marcus Ericsson. He had a great big tire print on his aero screen as he was driving into the pits to get service after that mugging. So, Tim, he had the fastest lap on lap 63 in this race. I think that Felix would have been in the mix. I think that Felix would have been in the mix for maybe a top 8 had he not gotten mugged in the beginning of this race. He was starting from 10th place.
Yeah, well,
fastest lap 63. Yep, Felix Rosenqvist.
Interesting. Yeah, so he was a lap down, then so he didn't finish well, but I think for a good pick as well. For all the reasons you mentioned, I think the thing that I guess didn't surprise me of Pato coming through the field, I think it's a mindset with him and a mindset of I'm at the back of the field. I'm going to go on pace, right? Or you're going to make 3 pit stops. We're going to be different than everybody else. So it's raw speed. It's raw, just go and race. And I think when you're in that mindset of I'm just going to go through the field, we're going to do the best we can, rather than I'm qualified second or I'm first and I need to win this thing and I'm going to do everything in my power to win this thing, rather than just go, I'm going to take what I can get, even in those situations, because it's not always going to unfold the way I think it's going to unfold. So yeah, good. The 2 teams that are normally up there made our picks this week, and for reasons that I think are valid, even though it wasn't a stellar performance along the way. They weren't in the top 4.
So, want to walk the grid with me real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Peterson, Benjamin Peterson, got in a lot of people's way this week, and he really drew the ire of Will Power, Scott McLaughlin, Alex Palou, David Malukas, just to name a few, right? Who's at fault here? Is this the driver or is this the team?
I think it's got to be the team, because I think a driver who's a rookie is going to listen to the team and tell them what to do. So I think you got to move over. I know you're trying to stay on the lead lap, but come on, you don't have pace. Middlehouse's not going to draw a bunch of cautions. You got to let them go. You don't hold up the leader where the lead goes from 9 seconds to 4, whatever it does,
right? And
then finally let the leader by. You can't do that. And then you can't have a train of cars 6, 7, even though you're battling Felix apparently at that time. You gotta just it's just based on pace that much, and you just got to be out there learning and not blocking people, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's running his own race at that point. No reason to mess up everybody else's. I got a tweet that was shared to me from our friend Spencer, IndyCar1909.com. If you haven't been there, you need to be there. Meyer Shank will run Blomqvist and a quote Ganassi driver in 2024. Spencer speculates, and I agree, that it's Sato is the Ganassi driver that will be at Meyer Shank Racing next year.
Well, that's a very interesting position on that. They obviously need to make some changes. Something's not right there at Meyer Shank, and they've admitted to it. But yeah, driver changes.
Tweet also mentions that Castroneves would be in a 3rd car for the 500, which makes sense, right? As long as he's going to be going for 5, I think somebody will be putting him in that car until he decides not to. Yeah. Where I don't have an opinion here, I don't know that I'm okay with Sato being in that car. I think the team needs some change. I don't know that they need this wholesale level of change, because they're moving the Blomqvist would be coming over from the sports car team. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and then Sato would just be Sato. He's very quality, still at his age. I mean, he's still putting up pretty good numbers there. The question really happens to Pagenaud, right? What happens to him? Does he go sports cars full time? Carpenter? Does he go to Ray Hall? Right. And I mentioned Ganassi, and Spencer had a great point. Ganassi's going to go youth. Maybe Kiffin Simpson.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. We always talk that Pagenaud's older, but he's not really that. He was 31, 32. Like, he's not as old as we all think.
Right. Yeah.
He's not as old as Elio. So, but I don't think Ganassi would go there by any means, right? Um, yeah, I think it's sports car. Honestly, that's where I would
I do
say he
too.
lands in sports car. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to take another seat in IndyCar that's with Carpenter or Ray Hall, right? Uh, I don't think it's where you'd want to be.
Simon is 39. Born in
Oh,
1984.
that was off.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
That wasn't an online fact check. It was just, oh, you're right. How old is he? I'm actually surprised by that. I thought, yeah, middle 30s. From Gacker. I told you I was texting Gacker over the weekend. Our friend there. He texted me this phrase, Tim, and I loved it. And I'm not sure if this is a Gacker original or if he picked this up from somewhere. I'm gonna label it original, but he said this: consistency is a sign of mastery. It was in reference to Dixon, who is consistent, and Award and Newgarden, who are not. So let me make a leap for you. Consistency is a sign of mastery. Has Palou mastered IndyCar? And does that make him ready for F1?
I think so. He's definitely putting it out there and showing everybody what he can do. And I think for whatever reason, he's been able to come in and, just do really. He's an IndyCar champion and he's dominating
amazing,
this year.
yeah.
Like he's got it. So I don't see any reason. And his finishes with Coyne when he first came in were really good as well. So
yeah,
he was averaging 12.5, I think, on finishes. So it's not something in that area. But yeah, I think he's mastered it. And unless something implodes, and I don't think anybody's predicting any implosion. And even when he got roughed up at Road America, he kept it cool and came back and won the race. So
yeah,
that's a sign to me that he's mastered the IndyCar ranks.
yeah. He has, and I think he's mastered it in a way that Zanardi did, in a way that Bourdais did, in a way that Cristiano D'Amata did. All three went to Formula One and had less than ideal careers in Formula One after delivering their mastery, right, of IndyCar, ChampCar, whatever you want to call it, and then came back and then continued to have a decent career. Zanardi's career was never the same after he came back from Formula One, but it's interesting, right? I don't want that story to be told for Alex Palou, but if somebody on the Formula One side's not looking at him and he is got an eye there, I don't know what you're looking for, right? Heard somebody recently talk about, well, a lot of those guys bring budget. A lot of those guys, have budget and everything else. I think he's definitely shown a level of mastery in a very competitive series that he's worthy of a paid drive. He's worthy of a paid drive at AlphaTauri. Nick DeVries.
I knew you were going to go there. I was going there in my head.
Sonoda, right? I think he's worthy of a paid drive at McLaren as a teammate to Lando Norris.
I agree. The kid is talented, man. He's talented, cool-headed,
and he's so good too, right? In all levels, he's the way he carries himself, the way he speaks, the way he drives on track. He sits for the interviews, right? We saw him in Detroit. He can't. Right, Kirkwood came in and he was sweating. I mean, it was like somebody had dumped a bucket on his head. And Palou came in like he had a little shower and a change.
Yep.
Right? I mean,
yeah, he's smooth. He's
pretty
really
slick.
Good.
Yeah, pretty slick.
He's mastered. It's mastery, in my opinion.
Yep.
So you agree, obviously.
I do. I really do. Sadly, I do. Sadly, because I'm starting to really get bored with watching Formula One. Grosjean, what's to come of Romain Grosjean? He finished the race, car intact, big deal. No landscaping like he did in Road America, but I feel like he took two passive-aggressive shots on the team. One after qualifying, say they messed up tire pressure. I don't think that's something you want to say on TV, Romain, right? And after the race, basically saying the car wasn't any good. I guess that wasn't passive at all. It was just full-on aggressive.
Yeah.
Or maybe it isn't.
I don't mind honesty, though. I don't mind honesty.
There's a certain level of honesty and there's a certain level of how you do it politically, right? For your team,
yeah.
for your sponsors and everybody else. This and here's the thing that bothers me, I think, most is that the crew has had to repair a lot of DHL bodywork this season.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, even taking small shots like this, honest or not, I don't think goes a long way of endearing your crew to you. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe he's got a deal in hand already and it's just not announced and he feels like he's in a position of strength so he can just, run off all these things. Or maybe he's trying to over prove to Michael Andretti, you're not going to rein me in. You're not going to change who I am. This is who I am. And he's like going overboard trying to prove who he is. Mm-hmm. Or maybe he doesn't want to come back. I had recent experience with somebody who I thought was, self-sabotaging themselves. And, that wouldn't surprise me. But if that's mm-hmm. what he's doing, where's he going to go? Where does he go?
I don't know if he's got to go anywhere, right? I think he could sail off into the sunset and be done if he really wanted to. If he's not, he could, but
you're looking at it from our eyes,
mm-hmm.
right? As opposed to a career race car driver. Mm-hmm. You're not ready to hang it up until nobody is willing to talk to you.
Yeah, but potentially, you never know what his mindset is when it comes to that. I think the thing that could drive him away is that he's not well liked in the paddock, is my understanding. There's been references of him being overly aggressive in races, and he hasn't really gelled with. And I'm using the word gelled with other drivers in the series. It seems like him and Kirk would have a good relationship, but other than that, him and Rossi obviously we knew didn't get along.
It's better.
Hear what Power has to say. Yep. I'm sure there's others that have the same opinion. So he may not be enjoying his time, and maybe he's just had enough of not speaking what's on his mind. I think he always has, though. So I don't see it as shots. I just think maybe it's a different culture, different way of, sort of expressing yourself, and you just say it like it is, and obviously deal with it internally at team meetings, and maybe it's stuff they've talked about and it didn't come around, and so you're a little frustrated. Yeah, should you vocalize it? Probably not, but at the same time, at least you're sticking around for the interview.
Yeah, there's a way to do it. Yeah, at least he's sticking around for the interview. Third strategist for the season for Colton Herta. I don't know what's going on here, man. Right? I wish we were insiders because there's got to be a scoop here. Right? There's got to be a scoop here. Yeah. Solid finish in hand this weekend, but thrown away by a pit speed violation. That's really what got Colton on that. But everything has to get cleaner, right? We've said it before, immensely talented. He's mistake prone. This is, I think, the first big mistake of the season that I can think of from Colton Herta. And that was this, right? It's pit speed. Dude, there's nothing your strategist or your pit crew's going to do for you. You got to hit the button. He got a little loose, might have been a wet spot, whatever it was, but nonetheless, he threw it away on pit speed. Talk to Scott Dixon about that at Indianapolis 2 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. It'll get you every time. So that's where that is. But new strategist, they can change that.
Yep.
But that's true. Everybody has to get a little bit tighter on that team, top to bottom, including
everybody makes mistakes every once in a while, right? But critical time for her to make that mistake, and you don't want to make those mistakes. And overall, you're the highest paid driver in IndyCar.
Allegedly, yes.
Allegedly, yeah.
Yep. Before we get into the standings, Marco Andretti, your guy, he's going to make his NASCAR truck debut at Mid-Ohio with sponsorship from none other than Group 1001. If that sounds familiar to you, that's the parent company for Gainbridge.
Yeah, imagine that.
Who was a major sponsor of Marco's daddy's company, and part owner of the company as well. So it sounds like it on the Formula One side, but nonetheless, part owner. Marco will be driving for Spire Motorsports. Tim, Marco driving for Spire Motorsports at Mid-Ohio. Big deal. The Gainbridge sponsorship of Spire Motorsports. Big deal. Could that mean an Andretti partnership over there? It's the only, right? That's one of the ones he doesn't have his hands in yet.
Yeah. Yeah, so, it could be. Yeah, I saw Marco was going over there. I saw his interview,
Big deal.
his self-interview, and talking to his phone on his private plane on the way there.
We couldn't get a camera crew there, right?
No,
Isn't he tight with
talking to the cameras, talking about how excited he was to go to Ohio.
One hand clapping.
I really like Marco. He's a good dude. Come on, he's a Andretti family. Marco. Mm-hmm. I think he had to live up to a lot, right?
I don't envy that position whatsoever.
Your grandpa's, the guy. I don't know. He'll do well, and then he's getting ready for the SRX series.
He's a brand. He was born into a brand, right? Yeah. I mean, they're a brand. They're not just a racing family. They're a brand. Who do you think you are, Mario Andretti? Right? I mean, they're a brand.
Totally are. So
good for him. Championship standings.
Cambridge and the whole crew.
Big deal. Palou extends his lead, 377 points. He's 110 points ahead of his teammates, Scott Dixon. Scott Dixon, who advanced 3 places. Joseph Newgarden hanging on to 3rd. Marcus Ericsson slips 2. He goes to I don't even have these labeled 1, 2, 3, 4th place. Ward 5th place. He drops 1. McLaughlin stays in 6th. Decent finish for him. Will Power up 1 place. He kind of flip-flops some places there with Alexander Rossi, who obviously slipped 1. Herta stays in 9th. Tim, after Road America, Kyle Kirkwood, Kirk Cowwood, your guy, was in 10th place in the championship. He's got to win it at Long Beach. He is no longer. He was displaced after Mid-Ohio by one Christian Lundgaard. Most unexpectedly. Christian Lundgaard in 10th place in this championship.
Shows how good he is. Shows consistency helps, and how do you take an average car and make it good? And Lundgaard's done it.
Getting ready to wrap it up here, Timmy. I got to wrap it up with the picks. Who do you got?
All right. I got Herta winning his 3rd pole in a row. Yes, thank you. And I've got Grosjean winning this thing. I think Grosjean's going to come through and win this. Herta's going to come in a close 3rd place, I believe, overall. And then my dark horse is from RLL, and it is Lundgaard, the guy who made it in 10th. I think based on the results from last year, I think they've got a package and they'll show up, and Lundgaard will be someone to watch this weekend or next weekend.
I haven't written down. Do you see it? So,
yeah, I see it.
Yeah. Herta for pole, Herta for win, Lundgaard for dark horse.
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah, even though I said what I said about Ray Letterman Lanigan on street courses, nonetheless, I don't know why. Again, I don't know why we don't pick Alex Palou, but nonetheless, here we are. Spencer also called in some picks. He picked Kyle Kirkwood for pole. I love this win. From Spencer. Will Power. And his dark horse is Simon Pagenaud, which I think is an interesting pick. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Out of thin air after his crash.
Yeah.
It's funny. So I'm going back to your picks. It's funny. I had Herta winning from pole, and then I changed it in the last minute there to Grosjean. It just didn't feel right, and so I changed it. So we're on the same page and not knowing. That's so funny.
We would have been totally on the same page, right? Yeah, it would have been Herta.
Yes, we would have been. Yeah. That's what I had written down. That's why I paused when I talked about Herta, because I was thinking through, am I going to keep him or not keep him?
Yeah. Tell us your picks in the comments section on YouTube or tweet at us. You can find all of our social media channels in the show notes. We have really good social engagement, and I always try to respond to all comments that come in there. And don't forget to visit IndyCar1909.com. Loads of good stuff to read there. We appreciate you tuning in. Probably a longer show, but you know what? It's been a couple of weeks, and was a lot of racing. So thanks for sticking with us. You didn't drop off in the first segment there, but nonetheless, it was a good show. Appreciate you tuning in. Look forward to catching up with you after Toronto. Thanks, everybody. That's all I got, Timmy.
That's all I got. See you.
See you.